The lesson we are about to teach is commerce, but madzidzisiro atunoita commerce akati siyanei nemadzidzisiro adzinoitwa in a typical classroom. We treat commerce as a portal to the business world. Saka here and there tichange tichiisa some accounting, some economics, some business studies. Of course, we centralize on commerce, but whenever necessary tichange tichiunza amwe ma-aspects anobva kuna amwe ma-subjects so that we steer interest in the study of commerce. Enjoy, and I hope you learn something new. Muzuva ranhasi tinoda kutarisa zvataitarisa nesuro, but because this is not strictly part of commerce tinonyora in a different color. Saka we have World Bank ranking. So I spoke to you about the Bretton Woods Conference, which was held in the United States of America. If my memory serves me well, it's in 1944. Ndopakagadzirwa the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. The main purpose of these organizations was to assist countries after the Second World War because of the devastation of the Second World War. Tine nyika dzinonzi ma-IAC countries kana kuti industrially advanced countries. And we have nyika dziri industrially advanced. Then we also have countries which are called DVCs. These are what? These are developing countries. That is also what we have. Saka pama industrially advanced countries ndo patinowana nyika dzine pfuma chaiyo chaiyo. Talk of America, talk of most of Europe, cannot a larger part of Europe. Also talk of countries like the United Arab Emirates. That's where we find them. Then pama developing countries tine nyika dzakasiyana ndo patinowana the rest of the world up. We get China, India, until we go to low income earning countries like Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is actually ranked as one of the poorest countries on earth, next to countries like Malawi, Mozambique, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, Somalia, and other countries, even countries which actually have war. Saka kana takatarisa ma-industrially advanced countries, aya ndo anenge achinzi iwo ma-high income earning countries. Saka high income earning countries. Then for my developing countries, we have different classifications. Kutanga tine anonzi ma upper middle income countries. Saka it's upper middle and income countries. This kana a high income earning country number 1, this would be number 2. Then panapa, an example of the countries we have here is South Africa, and surprisingly that's where we find China. From the upper middle income earning country tinoenda pa number 3, which is a lower middle earning country or a lower middle income earning country. This is not strictly part of your syllabus, that is commerce, but we do this to introduce you to the broad aspect of business. Saka lower middle income earning countries, an example panapa which is closer to my memory is Nigeria. Then from there we go to the 4th, which is the low income country or economy. And an example panapa, that's where we find Zimbabwe, we find Somalia, we find the Democratic Republic of Congo, Malawi, etc., Mozambique, This is where we find the poorest of the poorest. Mapaona. So when the president of Zimbabwe says his vision 2030 is to make Zimbabwe an upper middle income earning country by 2030, he simply means he wants us to change ranks from the fourth and the last to the second. But why am I talking about this? And you should remember kuti kucommerce dzedu andika tiri kutarisa commerce, and we said commerce is subdivided. Commerce subdivided into mainly two parts. We have trade and we have aids to trade. So that is what we are looking at. The reason why we are defining these different rankings of the World Bank, where we have industrial advanced countries and developing countries, then we see the highest rank, which is high income economies or high income earning countries, is number 1. Then kana takutarisa developing countries, they are subdivided into 3 different parts. We have an upper middle income earning country like South Africa, China. We have a lower middle income earning country like Nigeria. Then we have low income countries like Zimbabwe, Somalia, DRC, Malawi, Mozambique, and other poor countries. The reason I'm talking about this, it's going to be apparent, because we also said part of trade, if you remember from our yesterday lesson, takati we have what is called home trade, and we also have what is called what? Foreign trade, cannot international trade. Saka international trade ndo imwe inoita kuti Zimbabwe is a low income earning country. So we need to define this mechanically, and let us do that. Whenever you have a question, please, you should ask. And I think by the end of this explanation, I'm going to give you a research question. I expect you tomorrow, before we begin the lesson, to mu present zvamunenge mawana from that. Maybe before I forget, ndokuda kuti mu research about the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution. Maybe to specify of Europe, kana kuti ngatiti of the Western world. Yeah. The Industrial Revolution. So tomorrow you are just going to tell me in 5 minutes or more what you researched about the Industrial Revolution. And we are going to have a small interactive conversation there. Zvirikuitika hama yangu ndezvekuti taona kuti Zimbabwe is a low income earning country, kana kuti ine a low income economy. How do we define that? Now dzacho dzimwe amwe ma explanations atinawo rest on foreign trade. Saka what is foreign trade? Remember our color coding. Zvatonyora in black is important for commerce. Zvatonyora in a different color, it's just adding something to aid your understanding. Saka, these are illustrations. Why is, or what is foreign trade? So when we look at foreign trade, takati trade is simply an exchange of goods and services, or the buying and selling of goods and services. Trade is basically made up of 2 parts. The parts are exports and imports. I want to ask a question. Have you ever heard about something called GDP, gross domestic product? Anyway, ngonza kuti GDP.
Yeah, no.
Okay, let me explain it a little. So what happens, Mkoma, when you begin to to study or just look around nhau dzepfuma yenyika, muchasangana neinonzi GDP. Kuti GDP zvoreva kuti gross domestic product. Zvinoitika paGDP, I'm not going to write its definition, but it is defined as the total market price of all final finished goods and services in an economy produced within a year and also inside the borders of a country. What are they talking about? Tikatora every good produced in Zimbabwe, mukati meZimbabwe, hazvina basa kuti maChina ndo azvigadzira here, kana kuti maIndia ndo azvigadzira here, kana kuti maZimbabweans ndo azvigadzira. So long zvagadzirwa mukati meZimbabwe, we take every good and we also take every service. But tikutora the final good and futi tikutora the final service which has been delivered. If we take all the goods, tobva the price yakachajwa for those final goods, toeda price yacho yese, figure yatinowana inotiudza upfumi hwageneratwa munyika in that year. Is it making sense?
Yes.
Okay. So that is what is called GDP, kana kuti gross domestic product. Then zvimwe zvavanozoita manje, vane yavanozoti GDP per capita. Kana vachiti per capita vanenge vachiti tatora pfuma yese yakageneratwa, all the final goods and services, to divide the population in the country. And saka apa zvatiri kuita hypothetically tiri kushare pfuma yacho equitably pamunhu wega wega. Price yatinowanayo inotipa an indication of pfuma iri munyika plus if pfuma yoyo yaidistributwa fairly, vanhu vaiva a living standard yakaita sei. Unfortunately, GDP per capita haitiudzi anything panhau inequality, because you can have a country where only 10 people own 90% of everything in that country. A country of 15 million, but 10 people, they own 90%. Like the case of South Africa, which is famed, and actually it is actually mischievously the most one of the most unequal countries in the world, because 90% of the wealth is owned by less than 5% of the population. So we have GDP per capita, then we have gross domestic product. But the easier way of calculating gross domestic product, kuti consumption and zvinhu zvatengwa nevanhu, ma-consumers, toti plus investment, zvinhu zvakatengwa nema-businesses, tovatati plus government purchases, zvinhu zvakatengwa nehurumende, then tovatati plus x minus m. Kuti x minus m, x yakamirira exports, then m yakamirira imports. Panapa tinowana yavanoti balance of trade. Takuchidzokera ku foreign trade nemhaka yakakosha. Zvinoitika ndezvekuti kuti nyika ive neupfumi, zvinenge zvichinzi zvinhu zvamunotengesera vamwe ngazvive zvakawanda kudarika zvamunotenga. Your exports should be greater than your imports. If your exports are lesser than your imports, zvinoreva kuti munenge maita yavanoti trade deficiency. Saka panapa takutotaura zvinhu zvachazodzidza kumberi uko, trade deficiency. But how does it tie back to understanding kuti nemhaka yei dzimwe nyika dziri poor dzimwe dzisiri? The understanding here is a country should have a trade surplus. You should sell more than you bring in. But in order for you to be able to sell more, zoreva kuti you should be producing more in your country, because hakuna musha unotengesa zvinhu zvese, unorima munda wotengesa zvese wosara usina chikafu iwo. The idea is mapedza kuprodusa zvinhu zvinenge zvasara zvacho ndo zvamunotengesera other countries. Saka chinoita kuti titi ma-exports ngawande kudarika ma-imports, kureva kuti zvamuri kutengesa outside ngazviwande kudarika zvamuri kutenga, kuitira kuti munyika menyu macho muve nechi more production inoita kuti muve ne a great surplus which you then source out muchitengesera dzimwe nyika. Saka nyika dzakaita sedzedu dzine anonzi ma-agrarian economies, kureva kuti an economy iri over dependent on agriculture and the extraction of raw materials, dzinowanzo kuoperata on a trade deficiency, because muzimbabwe hamugadzirwi chero mechisa hamuna kana mechisa chacho haigadzirwi. Saka mechisa inofanirwa kutengwa mechisa inofanirwa kutengwa from outside the country. So do you understand why we have more imports than exports naturally? Because we make nothing, our industry is dead. Mapaona. Saka one of an indicator yekuti nyika iri kuita operate with in economic inefficiency, kungocherechedza kuti what do you buy or what do you sell? We sell raw materials, we buy everything else. So from what we learned yesterday we spoke about production. Tikati we have 3 different stages of production. Takati tinechi primary production, tikati tine secondary production, tikati tine tertiary production. Saka nyika dziri poor dzinospecialize especially neprimary production. Kungotora gold kubva kuvhu kana kuti kurima fodya kubva kuivhu, which is actually extracting raw materials from nature, motengesa zvakadaro. So you're going to see kuti nyika dziri poor kazhinji kacho dzimwe semaAfrica anenge achinzi ma-agrarian economies, economy iri over reliant on agriculture. Then nyika dziri rich manje munodziwana kutertiary kunoko. Sorry, it's industrially advanced countries. The reason why thichinzi industrially advanced countries, it's partly because of your research yandoda kuti mupresente mangwana, industrial revolution. Saka Africa did not industrialize, because the more you become richer, rich countries, they are more service oriented. Economy yacho inenge ichifocusa more on service delivery. And you see kuti even if in your academics you are going to see kuti the more you are educated, the more you are leaned towards service delivery. Vanenge vachichera makomba nekuita manual labor, they get low income as compared to those who are offering a service. So as a country becomes richer, it moves away from primary and secondary production more towards tertiary production. Saka our countries, Zimbabwe in particular, they are heavily primary producers of. Saka basa ndere kungo extractor from nature and sell. There is no industry because we didn't industrialize. So this is just a brief summary of why nations are poor. It's actually a study which you can jump into. If you are interested, I have some books I can recommend. But can you say that you have just a little understanding of why other countries are rich and why others are poor?
Yes, simple.
Okay. I hope you understand that you have a research question you should present Mangwana. Just 5 minutes. I just want you to tell me what you have researched about the Industrial Revolution. I repeat, the color black ndiye zvinhu zviri material to commerce. All the other colors, they are just there for illustrations, where we borrow from other areas of study, accounting, business studies, economics, so that we can consolidate and have a stronger base of understanding. Saka now back to commerce, forms of production. Remember, we defined production, we looked at the stages of production. Now we are now interested with the forms of production. So when we talk about forms of production, we are going to start with what is called direct production. Saka kana chiti direct production, it is as it sounds. I-production iri direct, but udirect hwacho huri papi ndo ungava mubvunzo. We define direct production as when one produces goods and services for own consumption. Saka direct production tiri kuti a person produces goods and services for own consumption. Uri kugadzira magoods nemaservices kuti umadye iwewe kana kuti umashandise iwewe. And we have to give examples here. The actually example inowanzokuva the more central is subsistence farming, where you are farming for your own consumption. Uri kurima kuti uzozvidya zvinhu zvaunenge warima. Saka hausi kurimira kutengesa, uri kurimira kudya. That's what subsistence farming is, and that is a form of direct production. So kana manga mchibvunza kuti udirect hwacho uri papi, udirect huri pakuti uri kuproducer goods and services kuti uzvishandise iwewe nemhuri yako. Saka we can talk about subsistence farming, we can talk about building your own house. And your own house, kana kuti making your own clothes. There are many examples you can think of. That is what direct production is. Now we want to discuss advantages. So in commerce, kana paine chinhu chakakosha chekutanga, definitions. Then whenever you put down a definition, you put examples, at least 2. Then the next most important thing in this subject, advantages and disadvantages. We are going to soon find out what those are the most central here. You define stuff, you give a few examples, then you know the advantages and disadvantages. Saka we are not going to claim advantages and disadvantages. We are going to look into ourselves and outwardly and just use common sense to make up advantages and disadvantages. Then we are going to need help here and there. So I don't know if you can give me just 1 or 2 advantages you think direct production has. Munhu ari kugadzira zvinhu zvaari kuzvishandisa iye. What advantage can we expect from that? What can you think of?
The person is not, I guess he's not losing much money since he's laboring himself.
Yeah, that can also be an advantage. kuti there's no loss of money since you are producing those goods for yourselves. That's a good one. But let us just go through a few examples. Saka, a few advantages I meant. Goods are produced to own taste. Unogadzira zvinhu because since uriwo uchazvidya ungabiki mbodza uchadya iwewe. Kana mukadzi achiita business rekutengesa sadza anogona kurivara akaritambodza noti haaridye ari kutengesera vamwe, but because uri kubika sadza rauchadya iwe haungazvipoisone nekuitambodza. Saka we are talking about goods produced to own taste. Saka per this advantage we can actually insinuate that they are going to be of a better quality, but that does not really like, how can we argue to get to that point? Because the quality of goods produced is heavily dependent on the quality of the raw materials, and it's not a given kuti munhu anowana the best raw materials in subsistence cases. So let us just end with goods are produced to own taste. Uri kugadzira zvinhu zvauri kuzokonsuma iwe, saka unogadzira zvinhu zvaunofarira iwewe. Kana pamusha muchifarira sadza remhunga muine kamunda kenyu, zvoreva kuti mucharima mhunga. Producing to own taste. Kana biridi achizivakira imba yake tisingaite include the constraint of resources, anozvivakira imba iri suited to his or her own taste. There is a Latin word known as ceteris paribus. We do not talk about it kukomes, but we always assume this. Like patiri goods produced to own taste, we are ignoring the availability or limitations of resources. So you should know this. With ceteris paribus, it's a term in economics which means other terms kept constant or other factors left constant. This is an assumption we are going to always have. Then with time I'm going to explain to you the issue of scarcity, choice, and opportunity cost, and these are called economic problems which everyone faces every day. So this is not yet the time to discuss that, but that is the first advantage. From there we can talk about it leads to self-satisfaction. But can you see that this is just a reframing of the first advantage? Because if something is made to one's own taste, it's going to lead to self-satisfaction. And tomorrow, what we are going to learn before we get into commerce, I want us to discuss what is called utility. Just briefly, 5 minutes tops. Saka, you have to remind me to discuss utility, because utility feeds into self-satisfaction. What is satisfaction? How do we measure it? There's a study in behavioral economics which looks at satisfaction, which is also called utility. Saka leads to self-satisfaction. What else? We can talk about efficient use of resources. Efficient use of resources. Nepamusana pekuti munhu ari kuziva kuti akawesta maresources ainawo hakuna kumwe kwaanomawana, uye kana achida kumawana elsewhere anomawana potentially at a cost. anotoshandisa zvinhu zvainazvo efficiently. There's a lot of recycling, there's a lot of saving and stuff, because kazhinji kana munhu ari involved in direct production anenge achida kureduce macosts as much as possible. haasi kuda kunotenga zvinhu and kana kuti kutenga stereki, ari kuda kugadzira zvinhu ipapo. Saka you see kuti kana ari murimi anorima chibage anogona kutotora mbeu pachibage chaakarima ichocho. That's what we are talking about pa efficient use of resources. Saka efficient use of resources mogona kuiframe as reduced wastage of resources. That's how you can frame this. Then another advantage we can talk about, it saves on labor costs. What do we mean? We are going to discuss about the factors of production manje, and in this discussion we are going to notice something. Labor is a factor of production. Factor of production, these are just resources used in producing goods and services. Saka kana tichiti saves on labor costs, tiri kuti kazhinji kacho direct production you don't have to hire labor because you are doing things on your own. Mapaona. Saka you don't necessarily have to hire labor. So because since you are not hiring labor, zvorova kuti there is a reduction. Actually, you save on labor costs. So these are the advantages which we have been given. You have to, in order for you to understand this subject, you have to look for relatability. Kureva kuti relate these advantages to your lived experience, what you observe around you, kumabasa, kumaraini, and also application of common sense. Kana mukafunga about an advantage which is not what we have written here, and you are able to write it clearly, if possible adding a little example, you'll be given your marks. And saka you don't have to be limited kuma advantage amuri kuona apa. These are just guidelines. Munofanirwa kuva neability yekufunga enyuwo ma-advantages. If they make sense to you, hopefully making sense to the marker, you get your full marks. So this is more like an open-ended subject, and I don't want you to be crippled. Many people, they just think I just have to cram my notes and I'll be okay. No. You have to apply yourself to be okay. So I don't know if you have any questions as pertaining advantages. If you have, you can ask, but waiting on you. Let us look at disadvantages.
Let's continue.
Okay. So kana chitarisa ma disadvantages, pop in. Tell me what you think is a disadvantage for producing your own stuff.
Okay, disadvantage yatanga kuya musoro mangu is specialization.
As a disadvantage. How can you explain?
You might, as you are building something, you might not be, have the perfect skill to come up with a perfect product.
Yeah, that is good.
Certain
That
things
is good.
which you need to be quite educated at it kuti unyatsobudisa something which is perfect. Saka iwe kana uchiita direct production unogona kubudisa something chekuti chinogona kugona chega chakamira.
Oh, that is true. Okay. Saka let us frame it. Your disadvantage yamapa ndiyo yekuti poor quality of goods and services due to low skills. iwe unogona kutozvifarira zvawagadzira but zviri marara. Saka ndo zvamataura, that's good. Okay, saka apa ndabatanidza 2 disadvantages according to what the book is suggesting, because the book is then saying lack of other related skills. Yeah, we can put it like that. Lack of other related skills. Ameno kana makambonzwa tsumo yevarungu inoti a jack of all trades is a master of none. Saka kana uchigona zvinhu zvese zvoreva kuti you don't have mastery in none of it. To such an effect yekuti, as you can see, when I was looking at our education system, I was thinking kuti our problem is tinononoka kuspecialize. Education magadziriro yakaitwa, it involves specialization, and let me just give you a quick example. Saka grade 1 to 7 we are doing the same thing mese. Form 1 and 2 potentially we are doing the same thing, but form 3 you start specializing. Vamwe vanoenda kuma arts, vamwe ma commercials, vamwe ma sciences. You go to form 3 and 4 you write. Form 5 further specialization. Vamwe vakuita MPC ama combinations which is just specialization. You are specializing. From there you go to university, you pick a field, you are specializing. Then in your third year you further specialize. That's why you graduate with honors, or you graduate with a major. You can say I did business science but majoring in accounting and economics, kana kuti in economics and statistics, kana kuti in law, kana kuti in chi. You go to a master's, that's a further specialization. Then if you end up at PhD, you are now specializing not on a subject but on a particular idea. You see, you're specializing on an idea. Like if you have seen the movie, what's the name of this movie? The Theory of Everything, where they were depicting the life of Professor Stephen Hawking. There's a scene where he discovered his specialty. He was doing physics and he specialized on time.
A singularity.
A space-time singularity. So the universe born from a black hole exploding.
Keep going.
What do you mean keep going? What? Before the universe began?
No. Keep going, develop the mathematics.
Sa mkaita PhD mkoma, muchange mchispecialize on a particular area. Yamunofila kuti you can contribute something new to it. Let me assume kuti maita a PhD maybe in engineering. You can specialize in a certain area yamunofila you have a contribution in. And that contribution should be new and original. Otherwise, you won't get that PhD. So these are the disadvantages. Lack of related skills. Then we can also talk about does not satisfy some of the basic needs. Because urukugadzira wega, saka this does not satisfy some of the basic needs. Saka mukapa a disadvantage or an advantage, if you give it, you can add a small example, just one sentence. My examples saying kurisa, they just have to make sense. Don't write paragraphs of examples. They should be short, precise, and to the point. Then lack of variety. There's no variety. And now a variety, it means that can affect your living standards. And murungorima chibage chete. Hapana variety, hapana munga, hapana raisi haririmi Zimbabwe, hapana chi. Saka because of that much, munoto affect your livelihoods. That is what this is talking about. Then we can go to, it can actually take long to complete a job. Saka zvinogona kukutorerai forever to complete. Whereas zvasiyana nemunhu anenge angoenda unotenga the same thing you are trying to produce on your own. Saka munhu ari unotenga 10 kg yeupfu nemunhu ari kurima kuti azowana upfu makatosiyana, saka pane time factor. So these are the disadvantages of it. But we are looking at types of production, or rather more specifically forms of production. Saka forms of production tati isusu pane direct production and what else chiripo, indirect production. Saka we now want to look at indirect production. Per indirect production, that is the last thing we are going to look at, but I'm going to give you another task. I also want you to present it tomorrow. I want you to research out disadvantages of indirect production. So you have 2 assignments, yokutanga industrial revolution, yechipiri disadvantages of indirect production. We are only going to discuss advantages of indirect production and what are these. Okay, saka indirect production is basically the opposite of direct production. Kureva kuti it is the production of goods and services for selling and cannot for trade. That's another way of putting it. One is producing goods and services to sell them. So that's why we didn't give a written definition, because it's clear, it's there. Can you think of an advantage of indirect production? It's obviously going to be an improvement upon direct production. Kureva kuti ma disadvantage a direct production in most cases ndiwo ma advantages a indirect production. So can you think of anyone?
Okay, there is variety.
Yes.
And time is going to be save time. Yes.
You can talk about use of technology to reduce time. And it Yamam Chidaya, we can talk about more skills through specialization. You can also talk about there is obviously an increase in the quantity and quality produced, the quantity and quality of goods and services. And again, then what else can we talk about? Tinogona kutaura pamusoro pe tinogona kuti goods are produced in surplus. Anditi amusingogadzira zvinhu zvinokukwanirai, saka goods are produced in surplus. Then leads to specialization, taitaura standardization and simplification, then leads to a wide variety of goods. Rabasa renyu mimi kutitsvagira ma disadvantages of indirect production. Okay, tomorrow in our lesson tichaita division of labor. We are going to look at saka tomorrow we are going to do division of labor. We are going to look at advantages or benefits of division of labor, disadvantages of division of labor, Then we are going to look at specialization, standardization, simplification, mass production, benefits of specialization of labor. Then tapedza kudaro tichazotarisa mafactors of production topedza topic. Saka mangwana tiri kupedza topic. So as we clock out, do you have any questions? And do you understand your assignments or your research questions which I have given you?
Yes, I do understand them.
Okay. Do you find this beneficial, or you just want me to be talking commerce alone?
Achatongoma, this it's a privilege.
And it,
Kuti, yeah, it's basic knowledge in Fanogozikana.
yeah, because the disadvantage of my approach is we take long. In an hour, we talking only commerce, maybe ngadaita topedza topic nas. But the reason why I want to use commerce as a portal to other things you have to know, it's because commerce, it's a basic introduction to business. But some of the things we talk about are going to be actually really needful. Like Nisro Takataro about estimated useful life. Izo zvimunganotenga chinhu mushop chamuri kutengera for as a capital good kuti muchishandise kuproducer maybe something you want to sell. Ngatiti matenga mushini wemafrisit. Makuziva kuti munofanirwa kuundastanda its useful life. And vanakawanda vanozviita pavanotenga mota vanotarisa mileage. Kunyange vakomana vakugona kuichinja mazwana. But vanotarisa mileage. Vanotarisira mileage kuzama kuestimata its useful life. Because ukatenga mota nhasi kafa mangwana zvibatsiri. Saka this is knowledge we get from accounting, some elements of business studies and economics. It's very important. Tomorrow we are going to talk about utility. We are also going to talk about economic problems, choice, opportunity, cost, and scarcity. Tichazvitaura in passing, tichangozviintroducer. Kana mune something chamuri more interested in, you can always research using your internet, your chat GPT, your artificial intelligence, and many research tools which are available in this age. Otherwise, thank you, Mkoma. See you tomorrow.
Okay. Tabas.
Tabas. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I also hope mneswa madzidza. I hope kuti my approach of using commerce as a portal to further study is also going to be beneficial to you. So if you want to learn with us, if you want extra lessons, you can always get to us through these numbers. So if you want to learn with us, if you want extra lessons, you can WhatsApp us on the numbers you find in the description of this video. But kuneva ne usimbe seni, the number is actually +263 71 046 9150. So +263 is the Zimbabwean code. Kureva kuti if you are in Zimbabwe, you can basically use 071 046 9150. Thank you and keep learning.